Hey, what's going on guys? Rago here. So I'm well overdue for some new fundamentals videos, and I actually had a couple different shoots planned out in Florida and Europe, and now we're all on lockdown, so I'm stuck at home. And I can't say that I'm complaining. It's our windy season. We've actually had wind every day this week. It's gonna be windy and warmer later today. So not the worst place in the world to be stuck. I live in a nice little beach town, and actually been keeping busy, so built some features, and we've got a little portable kite park planned out, and it's sort of revitalized my plans for the year actually. So rather than going on a bunch of different kite trips around the globe, I actually think I am going to get out with a Matt Kite RV and link up with our local team and start traveling around the state. We live in the Great Lakes, and they're massive, and there's all kinds of different slicks and different cool kiteboarding spots to be found along our coast and sand dunes, and it's actually pretty incredible place to live as a kiteboarder. So I think we're gonna get out with Chris and Blake and the rest of the crew and just travel around in an RV for the spring and summer and check out these different kite spots and set up our portable kite park and just kind of enjoy traveling a little closer to home until things clear over and we can start getting on planes and go to different places. So this week for this video, I wanted to cover a topic that gets requested a lot, and we've covered a few different times over the years, and I'm going to do a different take, and that is should you use kiteboarding boots, and what are my favorite kiteboarding boots? And in the past we've done videos like boots for straps, and we've often talked about how really beginners kind of should avoid boots. And there's truth to that, but I think we've kind of done boots a little bit of a disservice. And what I mean is, if you're a snowboarder, a wakeboarder, if you have any experience wearing boots in any other sport, after your first couple of months of learning the kite, you should be good to go. I had a good buddy, Ty, who was a street snowboarder, and kind of surprising, but when he was first getting into kiteboarding, a lot of different shops were telling him, hey, don't use boots, you should only use Footstraps. Oh, you're gonna regret it if you use boots. And kind of a funny story is he actually got it in his mind that he shouldn't be using boots. And after about, I would say like 2 months of learning how to fly the kite, like he was ready to go. The guy was already hitting features, all of his board skills actually did translate over. So if you're coming over from a sport where you use boots, it's gonna be a really easy transition for you, and while you're learning, yes, you should learn straps, but otherwise it's gonna be a more familiar connection for you, and there's actually a lot of advantages that do come with using boots. So like I said, we're gonna do kind of a little recap on the boots first straps. So when it comes to straps, there are some advantages to straps. Obviously, they're the most popular connection system for kiteboarders out there. It's a really diverse sport. Not everybody wants to do kite low powered tricks or things that might require boots. So if you're that rider who just loves to get big air, you want to do things like board offs, you're into kite loops and things like that, straps are obviously easier. They're easier to travel with. You can just get in and out of the board right away. You're way more flexible in straps. So when you're doing grabs or anything like that, you have a lot more ankle mobility. So you can really flex out that board and tweak it, things like that. Also with foot straps, they're easier to get upwind. So you have more of an ability to kind of like dig your edge and maneuver your feet and shift your heels. So all that extra mobility really allows you to get a better edge and just ride upwind a bit easier. And then obviously the biggest benefit here with foot straps is falling. So if you crash in foot straps, you're just gonna come out of the board, or you can kick the board away and just drop in the water. So, you know, foot straps, they're easier to use, easier to learn in, easier to get in and out of, and they're way less intense. So they do make things easier, but if you wanna do more powered riding, you wanna do wakeboarding tricks, or if you wanted to get into hitting features, or riding in a style that's more similar to, say, snowboarding or skateboarding, boots are definitely where it's at, and they're a really fun part of kiteboarding. And I'll admit that I'm incredibly biased. I would say that I choose boots 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10 actually. It's very rare that I'll even use foot straps. if they're around, for sure I'll pick them up and use them, but I definitely prefer boots, and I've used a lot of boots over the years. So the biggest advantages with boots are you're locked in, so you can hold down a lot more power and have a lot more control over your board. Now, I mentioned if you're coming from other board sports, like I was a snowboarder long before I was a kiteboarder, it really brings that element back into it. And again, if like you're a wakeboarder, it's gonna feel a lot more like other board sports having that connection system. And you do make some small sacrifices, so it's a little harder to get upwind. Granted, if you're somebody who's coming over from another board sport and once you figured out the kite, it kind of makes no difference at that point. Once you're like a second year kiteboarder, that's really not going to impact you too much. So really you get more control, you can hold down more power. I personally think it feels better, but you do sacrifice a little bit of flexibility. So it is, depending on the boot that you're using, it can be harder to make some of those grabs, and that comes down to the boot that you're using. Otherwise, really the biggest disadvantage is just catching an edge, and this is where basically, you know, if you're a wakeboarder, that's kind of a normal part of the sport. Sometimes you catch an edge and you take a hard fall behind the boat. And it's the same thing with kiteboarding. If you're using boots, the falls are going to be harder. And if you're new, it is a bit harder to get in and out of the boots and fly the kite. But if you're that second year rider who can fly your kite with one hand, it's really no big deal to reach down and just ratchet into a boot. So I would say that the biggest concern with somebody wearing boots when they're a newer rider comes down to core strength and kite control when you crash. So what happens when you fall into the water is, you know, your legs are now behind you, you're stretched out from the kite, and you need to swing your body back around to relaunch the kite and ride again. And a lot of new kiteboarders don't quite have the ability to control their kite while they're trying to swing themselves back around. You know, the current might be pushing against your board, and it does take core strength. So you do have to be a little stronger to wear boots. I'm sure you've probably seen the videos. Anybody can kiteboard. It's only as intense as you want it to be. You don't have to be strong to kiteboard, but you do have to be stronger if you're looking to use boots and then really appreciate the benefits that they offer for a rider who is going to practice that side of the sport that would require the boots. So all in all, I would say first year kiteboarders with no experience with any other board sport, absolutely Footstraps. If you're crossing over from a sport where you are using boots, then you probably should spend maybe 3 to 6 months using Footstraps and then cross over to the boots and enjoy all those benefits where you feel more secure. So if you're gonna do unhook tricks, boots offer a huge advantage. If you're gonna hit kite features, they offer a huge advantage, and they're just more fun in my opinion. Now, I mentioned that I was going to cover some of my favorite boots. So in the past, I have used everything from wakeboarding boots like Ronix, I've used a bunch of different liquid force boots, I've used different slingshot boots, and most recently I've switched over to Vatetex. And I gotta say, I'm actually super biased, so I will admit that the Vatetex have become my favorite kiteboarding boot. And the reason is it's a step-in system that's a lot like snowboarding. So you can see here, you actually wear the boot while you're on the land, and then while you're traveling, you get some major advantages. So some of the things I mentioned, like traveling with Footstraps is a lot easier. So when you're loading the car, you don't have a big boot here. I can stack a couple different boards with these. So as well, one thing that I am really excited about with these boots is it's the first time I've come across a kiteboarding boot where I feel like I could recommend it to somebody who was newer and wanted to get into it. And that's because you really take a lot of the issues out of the equation. So for example, when you're putting your boots on, the number one problem for new kiteboarders is they're trying to fly that kite and lock themselves in, and obviously if you're brand new, you should be using Footstraps. So one thing that I really like about the Vatetex is they solve most of the problems that somebody who's newer would encounter with boots. So obviously if you crash in your Vatetex, you still have to have the the strength to get your board back around and relaunch the kite. But for example, you don't have to worry about ratcheting in your boots or tying the straps or dealing with anything like that while you're flying the kite on the beach. So it is a step-in system, so you can just take the boot, put your toe in, and obviously I'm not gonna have the strength to do it here without wearing the boot, but you essentially just push your heel down and this will lock in. So these work great because you can just step right into the board and you don't have to worry about anything. And something else that I've come to appreciate about them is if I'm somewhere where it's cold or rocky, or maybe I'm walking somewhere super muddy and you know, I don't really want my feet to like be on the bottom of the water. So like, for example, if you're somebody who rides in Hatteras, there's a lot of like really sharp clamshells that could be in the Sound, or if you go somewhere like Hood River, there's rocks in the river, and then just pretty much any situation where you can think of where you don't want your bare feet on the ground. These protect your feet from anything sharp on the water. Or kind of funny, but I hate walking through muddy, swampy water. So a lot of times I'll be at a cable park where you have to walk through some pretty nasty weeds or something like that, or different kite beaches where the bottom of the water is just kind of not something you really want your foot stepping into. So there's just a lot of things that make these boots a lot easier for somebody who's newer. So if you are that rider who is crossing over, I would say the Vedatex are the first boot that I would recommend to a newer rider who does have some kite time and wanting to cross over. So just to recap, if you're a new kiteboarder, you should use Footstraps for at least 3 to 6 months. And then if you are that rider who's crossing over from another sport where you did use boots, highly recommend it. They're very fun, a lot of advantages. It makes kiteboarding feel a lot more like snowboarding or wakeboarding. And if you're that rider who just has no interest in those other sports and you just want to cruise and have fun and jump big air, Footstraps are easier. They're easier pretty much every way, and you're more flexible. So the choice is up to you. Don't be afraid to try boots if you do want to use them. And, you know, each to their own. They're a good fit for some people and a bad fit for others. And at the end of the day, that choice really comes down to what you want to get out of your kiteboarding. What kind of experience do you want to have? If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you next week with another fundamentals video.